Welcome to Strive, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Long Gatia. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the power of delusional self belief. Delusional self belief is the ability to believe utterly and completely in oneself to the point of certain insanity to achieve absolutely anything. The key word there is delusional. Delusional self belief. There is belief, there's self belief, and there's delusional self belief. I'll be able to explain what's that as we continue on with the video. So, this one trait alone has enabled great men to achieve absolutely great heights. And one of them is Alexander the Great, who we all know is one of the greatest conquerors and kings that has ever lived, aside from Jesus Christ, has ever lived and has conquered over half of the known world. And if there's one thing we could take from him, is this one thing that gave him absolute confidence and power: the power of delusional self-belief. Now, I'll be sharing four major points as I explain each and one of them in a very detailed and also practical way. So after this episode, you can have what it takes to be able to build that self-belief, that delusional godlike self-belief, which is required to achieve exponential heights. If any one of you is watching this video and has some measly goals, I don't think this is a video for you. This video is for people who have absolutely great goals that they want to achieve. They are hungry, they have a insatiable hunger within them to achieve great things. This is the video for you. We do not want small minds here. This is a place of strong minded and ambitious people. So before that, let me tell you a story about Alexander the Great. So in ancient Greece, around 356 BC, there was a boy named Alexander III. He was born in Pella, the capital city of Macedonia, or Macedonia, however you want to pronounce it, and it was located in Greece. Now, you know how Greece was very advanced at that time, very advanced nation. Um, at the at those times, it was a very advanced nation. It was like the Chinese or USA of that time, quote unquote. He wasn't just the son of King Philip, who was the king of Macedonia at that time. He was the prince growing up in a world that was in the edge of transformation. Things were rapidly changing at that time. Most boys his age, around 16, 17, 18, were chasing comfort, the normal things: women, wine, music. Music at that time was clubbing, and women at that time was just women, and also wine was just drinking. The chrome, all those stupid stuff that people drink. I don't really drink them. I do find them enjoying as a social event, but as alone, when I'm alone, I can't really drink it, and I think some of you would relate to that. But those who do, honestly, the world is yours for the taking. Everyone has freedom to do whatever they want to do, so please be my guests. So, most boys his age were doing exactly that. And there was a custom at that time to start training for war, because that was the norm at that time. So they might train in gymnasiums, throw javelins, train for wrestling, learn how to fight, learn how to use shields and spears and stuff like that. But majorly their lives were very, very small, local, and also tied to the villages that they lived. Their greatest ambition was to earn a name in a certain war, because war at that time, if you could make your name stand out during war, that was the biggest recognition at that time. And those are the things that the people were chasing. That was their biggest accomplishments, and after that they will go home and take a rest. But Alexander the Great was quite different. At 13 years old, his father, at 13 years old, keep that in mind, at 13 years old, his father, King Philip, invited one of the greatest teachers at that time, called Aristotle, a great teacher. I think he was the best teacher at that time, and also one of the great philosophers at that time, to be his mentor at 13. That is one hell of an advantage over everyone in the world. So while other boys were memorizing drills, Alexander the Great sat under olive trees. He sat under olive trees reading Homer Iliad. I think I'm pronouncing that well, Homer Iliad. It was a poem slash book about war, honor, respect, great warriors, stuff like that. But let's just call it a war book. It was just a book about war. At the same time, he was learning philosophy at 13, politics at 13, medicine at that scene, and even the structure of the known world, the knowledge that they had about the world, he knew that. And I think there was some advanced knowledge that they had at that time that we do not have access to it, or we're just too lazy to read it. But Alexander the Great at 13, keep in mind, was able to expose himself to these things. Now, the boy wasn't just reading those stories that he read about great warriors such as Troy. Troy was a not Troy, but Achilles. For those who have heard of Achilles, he wasn't reading those stories just like the way you'd read a fictional book. No, he usually internalized himself in those stories. He lived in his mind the stories that he was reading. He carried a copy of the war book everywhere. He journaled, he wrote notes, he did everything to just write down lessons and also key things that he might use in the future. And as we've talked about Achilles, the warlord at that time, who was, I think some people regard him as a myth, but I want to believe he existed, but maybe not as exaggerated as people want to make him. But if you want to know about Troy, about the warlord Achilles, the great warrior, I can recommend you to go and watch Brad Pitt's depiction of Achilles in Troy, 2004. It's a great movie. I haven't gotten a chance to watch it yet, but I've seen some reviews online, and I can completely recommend it. So he usually modeled his life around Troy, and he didn't live his life at that point as a boy. He lived his life like he was a legend in training. That was his mindset at that time. Most people think they're in university, so I'm a university kid. They identify themselves as a university kid, church boy, or clergy, or something like that. But Alexander the Great identified himself as a legend in training. That is one of the greatest mindsets that you can ever have, and as I'm going to teach you about that as we continue on with the video. Another thing I want to mention about Alexander the Great was his mother. His mother usually recited, yeah, that's the word, recited songs and lullabies before he slept, and those lullabies usually had certain stories into them, not story, a certain power into them, because his mother usually told him that Alexander came from the gods. He descended from Zeus himself. I didn't know. I don't think that's true. Maybe it's true. I don't think so. I think that's something that the mother usually wanted to tell him just to foreshadow the greatness that she saw in him. So Alexander usually was told by his mother before he went to sleep, and every time they had conversation, that you descended from the gods. Zeus, lightning hit my womb, and now you were born, and you are also descendant of Hercules, and we all know Hercules. For everyone who's seen the ancient stories, you also descend from Hercules. So imagine all that being fed into you by the time you are getting to 15, from the time you are actually breastfeeding to the time now you're at 15, leading wars and leading men into war and stuff like that. So imagine being fed such a narrative since you were young. You can imagine. So at that time, Macedonia itself wasn't a very peaceful kingdom. His father, King Philip, was brilliant, but he was a very obsessed and crazy warlord at that time, constantly fighting with Greek neighbors such as uh, Thebes, Sparta, and also which other one? Athens, however you want to pronounce it. So most of the time, his kingdom was absolutely restless. The boys were demanded to start training by the time they could start walking, and everywhere it was just bloodshed, violence, and ambition. That was the norm in that particular nation. So you can tell the hardship that was there. It was a very successful nation, but at the same time, there was a lot of hardship for especially the men at that time. But Alexander voluntarily let himself to suffer in that discomfort, to suffer or to let himself in that suffering. So by the time he was 16, Alexander had already started. So by the time he was 16, he had already started leading men into wars. By the time he was 16, by the time he was 18, he was leading cavalry charges. And now there's leading a troop and there's a cavalry charge. Leading a troop is like just leading a basic troop, just going into war, shooting spears and stuff like that. That's just leading the troop. But a cavalry charge is like when you bring a pistol and then you bring a machine gun. Now the machine gun is the cavalry charge, an epic assault, a very swift assault that is meant to disarm and disrupt the armies or the enemy's armies, if you get what I mean. So at 18, he was given the privilege to be able to lead such charges, and he usually did them at the forefront. Most royalty would stay back or maybe stay at the middle for protection, but for him, he usually led at the forefront. Oftentimes, when he was motivating his team, he usually showed his cards, he usually showed how much he bled for his people. And I think that was one of the greatest traits as a leader, to show you suffering with them, to show that relatability with their suffering is one of the greatest traits that you can do for those people who are watching this who want to be leaders. So that's something you can take from Alexander. So he usually led at the forefront and risking his own life despite him being the king of a great nation. Now, by the time he was 20, his dad died. King Philip died because he was assassinated, because those times assassinations were just all over the place. And Alexander inherited a very unstable kingdom. Now, his rivals heard of this, and they weren't very confident that the young man could do it. He was too soft. They said he was too soft, too unproven. And even his closest generals, the people he led at 16, at 18, the people he did battle with, his own generals, his own commandos, they really didn't believe that he could do it. But the thing with Alexander, he didn't ask for anyone's permission. He didn't ask for them to believe in him. He already trained for it under one of the greatest teachers, Aristotle, and he also trained his mentality and also his physicality. His mental and physical was well trained for conquering the world, because there's one thing Aristotle instilled in him: the world belongs to those who believe they can take it. The world belongs to those who believe that they can take it. That is something that Aristotle instilled in Alexander's mind. So he moved like he already had conquered. Now, in the single decade, in just 10 years, he marched from Greece to Egypt. I don't know if Egypt is Greece is this side to Egypt. I don't know. I don't have a good brain bearing. Sorry. So he moved from Greece to Egypt, and then from Egypt to Persia, then to Persia to India, because at that time he believed, not even believed, the world, people in the world believed that India was the stretch, last stretch of the earth. So he wanted to conquer even that, and he did. He conquered half of the known world in just 10 good years, 10, 15, depending on where you read. And he was undefeated in every single battle that he was in. If there was casualties, sorry, so if there were casualties, he didn't really mind, but he would make sure that he and his army led at the forefront. One of the greatest stories that I've read is that there was a certain island that he wanted to conquer, and there was only one way in, one way out. And his troops, commandos were a bit hesitant, and after seeing that, he cut the ropes and asked his men to destroy that bridge. So the only way back is after they've killed the entire armies. And mind you, they were outnumbered, I think, 100 to 1. So you can imagine. He created no way back. And through that sheer relentlessness and ambition and grit and confidence, and also sheer self-belief, delusional ambition. His ambition was so high that people couldn't compete with him. They were like, no, like, we're done. We want to go home. But his ambition was so high. His belief in his competence, his self-belief was so high. And among the things which led him to die, but we'll talk about that. How great men self-destruct, but that's another thing we're going to be talking about. But his ambition led him to great conquest, and that's what you need. By the time he died, he left a few things. Number one, an empire, a great empire, which was actually split, a great empire, an idea that belief, preparation, and also bold action and how can I call it? Unshakable, non-hesitant action can reshape your destiny. And that's the identity I want you to instill as I go on with this video. So, the first thing, or the first point, is move like success has already unfolded. One of the greatest psychological shifts is that which I've just mentioned. Move like success has already unfolded. And science actually backs this up. There's a psychological term called predictive coding. Your brain doesn't just react to reality, it predicts reality. It acts based on what it expects. Now, so if deep down you think you're still becoming the man, quote unquote, underline the word becoming the man, you will move with hesitation. But if you internalize that you are already the person that you want to be, you're already the man, you're already the shit. I'm sorry for using such derogatory terms. If you're already the shit, you're already the man who has success. You're already the man who is has that business. That's because I know most people watching this have businesses, they have ambitions, they're going to the gym, they're working out. That's the demographic that watches these videos. If you internalize that identity, then you're already, if you internalize that you're the man you're supposed to be, you're the man who you're chasing, you're already that man internally, you're stepping into that identity. And that identity, you will move like that person. Your energy will be that of that person. Do you see that? Your body language, your tone, and even your choices will be affected by that identity that you've just internalized. All that aligning to that identity and that vision of that person you've already become. Everything will align to that vision. Now, think about Alexander the Great. Everyone doubted him. Everyone, absolutely everyone. His commandos, his close friends, everyone doubted him. Even his enemies mocked him so much. And especially when you want to know you're doing something great, the more people are mocking you, more people are hating you. Low key, sometimes you don't even know, but low key, if they're hating you, that's when you know you're doing something great. If no one is like backing you up, and not backing you up, but if no one is pushing you against, if no one is pushing you at the wall, no one is hating on you, in a way, you're not doing something great. Maybe in terms of ambition and stuff like that. People who have great ambition, people who are up there, always have haters. And that should always push you to move forward in whatever you're doing. So, Alexander the Great did move like a boy who was testing his luck at 18. Hell, let me go and see whether I can win this war or something. No. Alexander the Great moved as if he already won the battle. He already conquered. The only thing was just reality to catch up. And that energy is so contagious. And that energy of believing that something has already been done and walking in that confidence, that is what we call, what social media right now is calling aura. Aura comes from that internalized belief. There's that something with someone, that thing that you can't really touch with someone. That's how we create aura. There are other tactics of developing aura, which is honestly the aura farming thing, which is honestly very I would say cheap, but this is how you create aura, this certain emission of energy, this allure. That's how it's created. And in a world full of hesitation, confidence is one of the greatest ways to rebel against that hesitation. So move like success has already unfolded. Now you might be thinking, that's a bit delusional. Yes, it's supposed to be delusional. It's supposed to be insane in a way. It's supposed to be like that. If Alexander wasn't delusional enough, he could still be the same as those boys right there. Although he had an advantage of being the son of a king, but that certain delusion, that not delusion, but I would say it's a increase in volume in someone's belief. If he didn't have that, he couldn't achieve the heights that he achieved right now. And obviously, if you look at everyone who is successful, anyone who you know is successful, anyone who you know is a top student, who you know is a great person or has achieved something great, in a way they're delusional. When they talk about the things that they want to do, it's a bit like, what? Uh, yeah. If you ever go like that, that's like cognitive dissonance in your mind trying to relate, like, I don't believe that's possible. They also believe that, but they choose to believe that minor belief, which is more powerful than the majority belief, which is you can't achieve such greatness. But when you tell yourself you can achieve, there's certain discomfort, like a tension in your mind that can I not, each belief competing with the other. Now that's tension. Now that's disruption is what we call cognitive dissonance, which is actually not very bad. It's something that you will always experience, especially when you're pursuing great goals. Now, Niccolo Machiavelli, a great leader of that time and also a very misunderstood philosopher, wrote a book called The Prince, a great book for anyone who is looking to be a leader, someone of influence, someone in politics, stuff like that. I'm not really interested in politics that much, but I would like to read it. And from what I've researched, it's something good. And there's a quote from it that I would like to share with you guys. And it says this: a man must act with, not a man, a leader should act with boldness, even if the evidence supports against it. Now, what this quote means, or what this quote tries to bring out, is regardless of anything that is saying no or is saying no, yes to the opposite of what you believe, you have to absolutely act with confidence, regardless of whether you're right or wrong, because perception creates reality. Even if you're wrong, people will believe you, honestly. And I will be talking about how belief shapes reality or how belief creates your external world. I'll be talking about that in a few, but when you act with boldness, regardless of whether you're wrong or right, people tend to believe it, honestly. People tend to believe it, and that belief now shapes reality. If people believed we are going to be beaten seriously in this war, but at the same time you act with absolute boldness saying we can win this, which Alexander usually did because he usually went to war with lesser numbers than their enemies during battle. So let's say 50 out of 2 or 50 out of 10. That's the number that he usually went with to battle. And most of the times, it was strategically correct that they would fail. But most of the time, he acted with absolute boldness and saying, this is what we're going to be doing, and this is how it's going to be successful. Plain and simple. If you do not act like sorry, there are a lot of planes here in our place, so just bear with me. So that's how you should be acting. In the pursuit of your goals, you should be absolutely bold enough, regardless of whether the stats say you're wrong or you're super, super wrong. You must act with boldness. It's better to fail in the pursuit of something great. That's what he said. Better to perish in the pursuit of something great. There is no better comfort or there is no better reality than that. To pursue something, to perish in the pursuit of something great. That should be your reality. And some of the things that society usually tells you is be realistic, or don't get ahead of yourself, or stay humble, stuff like that, which are good. You should stay humble, but in reality, what they mean is stay predictable, stay small, stay safe, because society doesn't really like unpredictability, they like safety. Often, when you tell your parents certain things, they tend to tell you just don't do it, just stay there, we'll provide for you, it's just okay, be good, just relax. But that's just a mirror in what society has conditioned people to be. Stay safe, stay humble, stay predictable. Stay small. We don't want you to be doing extraordinary stuff. No, 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 no. We don't want you to do that. But the thing is, if you're aiming for extraordinary stuff, you're bound to be called delusional. You're bound to face that resistance because most people don't like that. Subconsciously, not consciously, they might think, okay, yeah, we're supporting it, but subconsciously they'll be like, mm, mm, no, we don't like that. No, we don't support that. The words that they're saying out of their mouth might not be supporting what they think here, but what they think here in a way tends to be sort of uncomfortable. And that um that's delusional. Being delusional, in a way, it's a psychological necessity for those people who want to be successful. Now, when you have that psychological, not that cognitive dissonance in your mind where you believe something very, very much, but at the same time, there's something else telling you, oh my God, maybe not, maybe not. That cognitive dissonance, it will always be there. As I've said, it will always be there. Now, the problem is people don't know how to handle it, and the majority of the people you will face, or the majority of the content you will consume, will often tell you this other side is more correct than this other side. But that's why people like me exist, creating this podcast to tell you that you can achieve it. Even if you don't achieve reaching the stars, you'll still land on the moon, or you still land close to the moon, but you're out of the stratosphere. You get it? But in order to build that belief or to stack up that belief, you need to have evidence, because all all things is all behavior, all acts or habits, all of them are identity linked. And when the mind confronts you and tells you, do you remember those times where you're studying, you're forcing yourself to study, and subconsciously asking yourself, why am I doing this? 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 What the brain is asking for you there is just evidence as to, can we really do this? Is this something that we can really do? When your brain starts asking you that questions, you need to provide evidence. And if you don't provide evidence, you will fail. Now, I don't want you to fail. Sorry. Now, I don't want you to fail. What I want you to do is to have that evidence, which I will help you create as you continue on with this video. But always remember, there will always be that psychological cognitive dissonance, that tension within your mind where you have this delusional belief, but at the same time, you have this logical belief telling you, or this logical belief that is telling you, hey, can we do this? Can we really do this? I don't think we can. As we call it, it's called doubt. Now, doubt is just one belief and another belief. I think we've said too much in that point. As we said, a little delusional. Being a little delusional is necessary. Now, there's a very powerful concept that I'll mention actually in the second point that I want to mention right now, and that is reality bends to belief. We've been trained to believe that reality is just something we observe, but in actuality, reality is something that bends to belief. Just a minute. So, yeah, reality is something that bends to belief. For example, I would want you to look around your room or your house, or just remember a great place that you've ever visited, or maybe a great hotel. There's a car that you've ever entered into, so nice and great. All of that came from an idea, a thought. Everything came from a thought. Now, after someone conceptualized that and said, I can create this, now it became factual. And that's where this quote from William James, the father of modern psychology, comes to play. It says, belief creates the actual facts. Belief creates the actual fact. And he was very correct. When your belief, now your internal belief, is fragile, your external wall will always break. But when your belief is rooted down, the belief that you have in yourself, when you become your identity, you become that North Star over the person that you want to be, your external world is reshaped. Now, I will come back to this quote of, it's better to live, there's no better life purpose than to perish attempting the great and the impossible. Always make sure your internal world is so strong, especially if you're someone who wants to pursue such great things. Make sure your internal world is so strong, and it's built out of evidence being stacked into that belief of that person that you want to become, which I will help you create in the next step you're going to be coming into. So When Nico Machiavelli, not Nico Machiavelli, when Friedrich Nietzsche said this quote, he was celebrating the will to aim higher than logic, to aim higher than the comfort zone that usually people tend to aim for. The reason people usually aim for small goals, like I want to earn this kind of money, yeah, not too much, just like that. They would say I'm comfortable with that, but in reality, they don't want to feel the sting of failure because failure does sting. But for those people who are rare, for those people who are daring to believe, they set impossible goals. Slightly impossible, almost impossible to reach, because when you set possible goals and achieve them, now everything is just flat. You just have to now, you know, just that fire will go away. But when you set impossible goals, not too impossible, like for example, I want to make $1 million by the end of the month. No, if you say I want to make 10K by the end of the month, because it's a very difficult goal, but still you can do it. You live in the tension of becoming the person who can achieve that goal. That tension of can I do it? Can I push myself to that? No, that is what is required. That tension, that uncomfortability, that's where you are created. That's where you're forged. After in your mind, you've created this person, you've decided you're this person. Now, that tension forges and solidifies that identity within you. You might not achieve 10K, but you become the person who achieves 7K a month. Now, so that 7K a month can be used to double that and becomes 14K a month because you become the person who has those skills and has that wisdom to be able to create 7K a month. I'm just trying to use a simple analogy so you can just understand everything I'm saying. So don't avoid the tension. Yes, set impossible goals, but those impossible goals have to be almost reachable, but then again, not reachable. Yeah, there's this concept of yeah, still predictable, but as we've said, they always tell you that just so you can stay not predictable. But at the same time, it is motivational to break that goal into now predictable small goals to help you reach that impossible goal. But the point that they miss is that set predictable goals. They avoid the part of set impossible goals to bring up this tension. And then this tension will develop you into that particular person that will continuously pursue these goals regardless of anything that happens. Because someone who has made a million is someone who has really endured a lot of shit to be able to get there. But when everything is taken away, those skills, that mindset, that wisdom will still stick with them because they are the $1 million person. That's them. Sorry, there's someone who's talking outside. That's them. Now, the first 3 points that I've just mentioned, the um, reality bends to believe, you need to be a little bit delusional, and also moving like success is already unfolded. Those are beliefs that I wanted to instill in you, a certain mindset shift, a mental shift that I wanted to make in your mind. Now, this other point, which is created out of these 3 points, is now the practical sector of this video. I want to give you 3 things that you continuously be doing will be doing. I won't tell you to look for a business model we can be doing. I won't tell you to uh, create a workout plan or something that no, this just those are tactical stuff. I want to give you the principles that can apply to those tactical stuff that you will always be doing. So here are the principles that you will be following. Number 1, honor micro commitments. Honor micro commitments. If you say you're going to be waking up at 6 a.m., wake up at 6 a.m. If you're going to be going to the gym 30 minutes every day, go to the gym 30 minutes every single day. And in order to maintain this commitment that you have to yourself, make sure you never set a pace that you cannot maintain. Set a pace that you can maintain. If you're going to be going, it's better you go 20 minutes every single day to the gym than 1 hour and lift heavy than and miss the entirety of the week because you've lifted so heavily and you need the entire day to recover or the entire week to recover. So never set a pace that you can maintain in order to maintain or to honor those micro commitments or those commitments that you dedicate to yourself. And when you follow through, when you stack up those wins and those commitments that you've already done, you create self respect and you create the evidence that is required when you when your mind gets to the point of testing you and telling you, hey, can we do this? You show him the evidence, or you show it the evidence that, yeah, we can do this. Necessarily, you don't have to do like open a list and just start reading them. No, it is important to have them, but most of the time, your brain will have recorded it, and even before it reaches your conscious mind, it would have already answered itself. The next thing is protect your inner world. Protect your inner world. So you remember when I told you that Alexander usually got fed this narrative that he came from the gods. That is one of the the pillars that created him or created his character. So what I want you to do is to curate a world that tells you you are the person who you want to become. Create that reality like your life depends on it, because your mind doesn't know the difference between reality and also what you consume or what's fictional. It doesn't know the difference. It just takes it as it is. Do you remember the predictive coding that I've talked about in the first video? It doesn't know what's right, not right or wrong. It doesn't know what's reality, what's fake or not fake. It just knows I will take this and I'll use it to predict my future. Now, my future being me. So curate a world that helps you to identify or solidifies that identity that you want to be or want to become. And the last thing is seek resistance on purpose. Alexander the Great, I want to mention him the last time, at age 13, not even at age 13, even before he reached age 13, his father introduced him to the hardship of the intellectual hardship of learning and reading and mastering and understanding stuff. Reading ethics, politics, and war at 13, 16, that's not something even my kid, no, not my kid, a kid, my baby bro, even not even my baby bro, us when we were young, you can relate. At 13, algebra was the most difficult thing. Not even algebra, the multiplication table was one of the most difficult things that we have ever learned. And we usually got beaten mercilessly because of not understanding the multiplication table. And we are thankful for that. But at him, he was learning ethics, politics, and stuff like that, medicine, the natural world at that time. So you can imagine. And letting yourself suffer, develop something called grit. Grit is a combination of discipline, commitment, steadfastness, and all those stuff combined together to create something called now grit. Now, grit is termed by Angela Duckworth, a psychologist from, I think it's the USA or Australia, I don't know. He or she, sorry, coined grit as sustained persistence towards a long-term goal. Sustained persistence over a long towards a long-term goal. So to develop grit, now that thing that will sustain you for a long term as you continue pursuing your goal. I think it's pursuing. I don't know. I'll say pursuing. It will help you continue pursuing your goal. So resistance trains you to see adversity as punishment, not as punishment, sorry, but as a preparation. Now, as I've said, honor micro commitment, sorry, protect your inner world, seek resistance on purpose. And as a recap, here are the 4 points. The first thing, the first three are the mindset shift that you need to have. Move like you have already achieved that you wish to achieve. You wish to achieve. Sorry. So let me just drink some water. Definitely been talking a lot today. The second thing is you need to be a little bit delusional. Some aspect of being delusional is necessary. The third thing is reality bends to believe. So make sure you protect your inner world and your inner belief and your inner identity, and it will shape the external world. And then the fourth thing are the practical things that you need to do to be able to stack up evidence against the doubt that will always come into your mind. Are you a person that wake up if you want to wake up early? And when you honor your macro commitments, you'll have the evidence that I am a person who wakes up early. And if you continue studying, it'll be like, I am a person who is a top student. For those who are students, I am a business person. I am committed to my work because every single day for 2 hours I commit towards deep work. And also the second thing for the practical stuff, or the practical aspect, is protect your inner world. Consume something that solidifies or reinforces the identity that you want to take up, and then seek resistance on purpose. After that, I want to mention one last thing. If you forget everything that I've just said in this video, remember this one thing: move like you've already achieved that which you want to achieve. Move like you're already the shit. Always remember that. I was your host, Long Mashiri. Make sure you subscribe, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Cheers and God bless. Follow the socials down below. All of them is just Long Gatia. I think Long Gatia. Oh my, just did I change them? I'm not sure. You'll go and find out in the description below. And also leave a comment of anything that you have learned, anything that you've learned in this today's episode. And also share with a friend who might be find it beneficial to have such kind of belief, or someone who might find this information very helpful. Cheers again, and God bless.